a waitress cautiously approached a wealthy man, urging him not to proceed with a significant business deal involving his closest friend. The following morning, a sleek, high-end car appeared near her modest home. William Parker adjusted his cufflinks as he surveyed the elegant, bustling cafe. It was meant to be a day of celebration. He and his longtime friend, Daniel, were on the brink of finalizing a monumental deal, a partnership that would secure their company's position at the top of the industry and promise them financial stability for years to come. The cafe was alive with quiet conversation, the clinking of silverware and the inviting aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Everything seemed flawless, yet beneath the surface, tension was quietly building. "Daniel, I'll be back in just a moment," William said, rising from the polished mahogany table. Daniel, immersed in his phone, barely looked up, giving a half-hearted nod. William stepped away, feeling a rush of pride. Years of hard work and dedication had led him here. He and Daniel had built their empire together, and now they were on the cusp of reaching new heights. However, while William was away, the atmosphere around their table subtly shifted. Isabella, a young waitress who had been serving them, approached to refill Daniel's water. She had worked at the cafe for several months, always maintaining a low profile and never involving herself in the private conversations of the wealthy patrons. But today was different. As she neared, she caught a few chilling words that made her heart skip. Assuming no one was listening, Daniel was speaking quietly into his phone. His words struck Isabella like ice. "Everything's in place. William has no clue. Once this deal is signed, I'll control everything. By the time he realizes, it'll be too late. I've been planning this for months. The company, the assets, every bit of it will be mine." Isabella's hands trembled, nearly spilling the water as she backed away, her heart pounding. She couldn't believe what she had overheard. Daniel, supposedly William's closest friend and partner, was secretly plotting to take over everything they had built. She returned to the kitchen in shock, grappling with what she had just heard. It wasn't her problem, she was merely a waitress, after all. But her conscience wouldn't let her ignore it. Could she really walk away without warning him? Moments later, William returned to the table, unaware of the treacherous conversation that had occurred. Daniel greeted him with an easy smile, concealing his hidden agenda. Isabella observed from a distance, her thoughts racing. She had always been one to keep to herself, but this was different. She couldn't sit by and watch an innocent man be ruined by his closest friend. Summoning every ounce of courage, Isabella resolved to intervene. As Daniel excused himself to step outside for a call, Isabella seized the opportunity. Taking a deep breath, she approached William's table, feeling the weight of the moment pressing heavily on her. "Excuse me, sir," she whispered, her voice barely audible. William looked up, surprised that the waitress was speaking to him. "Yes?" he asked. Isabella hesitated, her heart racing, but there was no turning back. "I overheard something you need to know," she said, glancing nervously toward the door where Daniel had exited. William frowned, uncertain. "What are you talking about?" "Your friend, Daniel. I believe he's planning to betray you. I heard him talking on the phone, saying he's going to take everything from you once the deal is complete." William blinked, stunned by her revelation. His first instinct was disbelief. This was Daniel, his trusted friend of many years. Why would she even suggest something so outrageous? I'm sorry, what?" William asked, struggling to process her words, a mix of confusion and doubt creeping into his voice. "I know it sounds unbelievable, but I promise you I'm telling the truth," Isabella continued, her voice filled with urgency. "I overheard him say it. He's planning to take over your company and leave you with nothing." Gradually, William's initial shock gave way to suspicion. Could this truly be happening? Could it be possible that the man he trusted most was planning such a deep betrayal? He glanced toward the door where Daniel was still outside, a gnawing uncertainty beginning to unravel his trust. "You're certain about this?" he asked, his tone growing serious. Isabella nodded, her gaze unwavering with sincerity. "I wouldn't have told you if I wasn't. I couldn't let you go into that deal blind." William leaned back, his mind reeling. He had known Daniel since they were young. Together, they had built this business from scratch. The very thought that Daniel might betray him was almost unimaginable, but something in Isabella's demeanor struck him. She didn't appear to be lying. She seemed genuinely troubled. "Thank you," he finally said, his voice subdued. "I appreciate you telling me." With a nod, Isabella slipped away, leaving William alone with his racing thoughts. The anticipation of the day had suddenly turned fragile, on the brink of collapse. He looked at the contract on the table, torn. If Isabella was right, Signing this deal could be the biggest mistake of his life. He needed to be certain, he needed to discover the truth. And as Daniel re-entered the cafe, smiling as if nothing had happened, William knew one thing beyond a doubt: he could trust no one, not even his best friend, without verifying the facts. William Parker sat at the table, his mind tangled with a mess of doubt and confusion. He watched as Daniel returned, a carefree smile on his face, as if nothing had shifted, as if William's whole world hadn't been turned upside down. Isabella's words echoed in William's mind. He's planning to take over your company and leave you with nothing. It was impossible to reconcile this accusation with the man now sitting across from him. All good? Daniel asked casually, taking his seat again, seemingly unaware of the storm brewing within William. William forced a smile, despite the knot in his stomach. Yeah, just running through the deal in my head. You know how it is, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Daniel nodded, taking a leisurely sip of water. I get it. Big decisions, but we've been aiming for this moment for years. It's time to make it official. William nodded absently, eyes fixed on the papers laid out before him. Years of work and dedication were poured into their shared vision, and now they were on the verge of taking it to new heights. But Isabella's words, coming from someone who had no reason to lie, had unsettled him to his core. Could Daniel, his friend and business partner, truly be capable of such a betrayal? The thought gnawed at him. They had been through everything together. William wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, or that Isabella had somehow misheard. But the urgency in her voice, the honesty in her gaze, made it impossible to dismiss. I think I need a little more time, William said slowly, his gaze still locked on the contract. Daniel's brows knit together briefly. More time. William, we've been over this deal for weeks. We're ready. I know, William replied in a measured tone, but I just want to make sure every detail is in order. No harm in double-checking, right? For a moment, something flickered across Daniel's face. Was it frustration? Annoyance? William couldn't quite place it, but it was enough to stoke the doubt now smoldering in his mind. Of course, Daniel said, but his smile seemed forced, his eyes lacking warmth. Whatever you need. I just think we're in a good place. This deal could change everything for us. William smiled, but it felt strained. Exactly. Which is why I need to be sure. Daniel leaned back, seemingly unfazed, though William sensed a subtle shift in his demeanor. Take your time, but don't wait too long. Opportunities like this, they don't come around every day. William nodded, his decision forming more solidly. He wouldn't sign anything until he had more information. I'll let you know soon, he said, standing up to leave. Daniel remained seated, that same smile still plastered on his face, but William felt a chill, a tension between them that hadn't been there before. The camaraderie that had once defined their partnership now felt shadowed, tainted by suspicion. Walking out of the cafe into the cool evening air, William's thoughts swirled with suspicion, disbelief, and a rising sense of dread. He didn't want to believe his closest friend could betray him. Yet he knew he couldn't afford to ignore this warning. Too much was at stake. As he approached the cafe entrance, he saw Isabella waiting by the door, looking anxious. She met his gaze, her lip caught between her teeth as she asked, "Did you talk to him?" William paused, hesitant to share too much. I didn't sign anything, but I need to look deeper. Isabella exhaled in relief. I was so worried. I didn't know if you'd believe me. William studied her, curiosity edging into his thoughts. Why did you tell me? She looked down, collecting herself before meeting his eyes. I know it wasn't my place, I'm just a waitress. But after hearing what he said, I couldn't let you go through with it blindly. It just didn't seem right. Her honesty caught William off guard. She had risked something by telling him, and it was clear she had no personal gain in doing so. Her concern for him seemed genuine, and that only deepened his inner conflict. Thank you, he said finally. You may have saved me from making a terrible mistake. Isabella shifted awkwardly, clearly unaccustomed to such attention. I'm just glad I could help. Still weighed down by the day's events, William knew he needed more than just her warning to act. He needed concrete proof. I'm going to hire someone to investigate, William murmured, mostly to himself. I can't make any big moves until I know for sure. Isabella looked relieved that he was taking her seriously. That's probably wise. I hope it's not true, for your sake. William managed a tight smile. Me too. Walking away, William scrolled through his contacts, searching for someone who could help him get to the bottom of this. One name came to mind, a private investigator he trusted, Liam. William dialed, waiting as the line connected. Liam, it's William Parker, he said when the familiar voice answered. I need your expertise. There's something going on and I need your help. Over the next few minutes, William explained what he'd heard from Isabella and his rising concerns about Daniel. Liam listened intently, asking sharp, pointed questions, and agreed to dig into Daniel's finances immediately. I'll get back to you in a couple of days, Liam assured him. William ended the call, a mixture of relief and anxiety settling in. He had taken the first step toward the truth, but now, he faced the hardest part waiting. As William Parker headed back to his car, he found himself glancing over his shoulder, half expecting Daniel to burst out of the cafe, demanding an explanation. But the door remained closed, the street quiet and empty. For now, William was left in the dark, but he knew it wouldn't be long before he uncovered everything. The following days passed in a haze of restless anticipation for William. Every exchange with Daniel felt loaded, every word weighted with data. It was as if each casual comment could be a clue, part of the scheme that Isabella had warned him about. Yet, Daniel continued his charming, friendly act, never revealing a trace of deception. If he was indeed plotting behind William's back, he was doing a masterful job concealing it. Meanwhile, William's trusted private investigator, Liam, had begun delving into Daniel's financial records. In the past, William had only involved Liam in delicate business affairs a few times, but Liam's thoroughness had proven invaluable each time. This time, William knew Liam's diligence was crucial. Despite the tension building up within him, William tried to act as if nothing had changed. He met Daniel for routine meetings, attended board gatherings, and even went out for drinks with him, keeping up appearances. But all the while, suspicion buzzed in his mind and he watched Daniel intently for any slight slip, any sign that Isabella's warning held truth. Yet Daniel remained the same easygoing, affable man William had known, which only deepened his inner conflict. On the third day, Liam called. I've uncovered something, he said, his voice steady but serious. William, seated at his desk, immediately sat up straighter. What did you find? There are some irregularities in Daniel's personal accounts, Liam explained. Several unexplained transfers over the past months. He's been funneling money into an offshore account. While that isn't illegal in itself, the timing raises red flags. It coincides with when you both started discussing this new venture. William felt a knot tightening in his chest. How substantial are these transfers? Not massive, but significant enough to make one question his motives, Liam replied. It's clear he's been setting something up on the side. William exhaled, rubbing his temples. Do you think it's connected to what Isabella overheard? Highly possible, Liam replied. People don't start moving funds offshore on a whim, especially not discreetly. It's often done to hide something or to prepare for a big move. My guess is he's positioning himself for a major play once this deal goes through. William closed his eyes, the weight of the situation pressing on him. Isabella had been right. Daniel was indeed plotting something, and from Liam's findings it was far worse than William had initially feared. Keep digging, Liam, William instructed, his voice resolute. I need more than just suspicions, I need hard evidence. I'll keep you posted, Liam assured him before hanging up. William put down the phone, his gaze drifting to the large window overlooking City North Star. The view, once a source of inspiration, now felt empty as his mind raced. How had it come to this? Daniel had been by his side through every hardship, every victory. They'd built this empire from the ground up, celebrating triumphs and weathering losses together. And yet, it seemed that Daniel had been planning his betrayal for months, quietly moving funds in preparation for a takeover. Anger began to simmer in William's chest. He had entrusted Daniel with everything. The idea that his best friend would turn on him just to claim a larger stake in the company was nearly unthinkable. Nearly. The resentment burned hotter as he recalled Daniel's words from the cafe, the casual, assured tone in which he had plotted to seize everything from William. Had Daniel always harbored envy, quietly planning William's downfall while pretending to be his closest ally? That evening, William met with Daniel for dinner, a regular arrangement that had always been a chance to discuss business in a relaxed setting. But tonight, William's heart hammered under the weight of what he now knew. Daniel was already seated when William arrived, greeting him with his usual easy smile. But as William sat down, he saw his friend through a different lens. Daniel was no longer his trusted companion. He was the man scheming to take it all. They exchanged pleasantries, talked about the day's events, and discussed potential leads. Daniel, as always, was charming and persuasive, speaking optimistically about their future as if nothing had changed. So, where are we on the deal? Daniel asked casually in between bites of steak, still on track for the original timeline. William paused, studying Daniel before responding. I'm reviewing a few things, he said, keeping his tone neutral. I just want to ensure everything's aligned before we sign. A fleeting expression crossed Daniel's face. Was it frustration? Annoyance? William couldn't be certain. But then, Daniel's smile returned, as smooth as ever. Of course, Daniel replied. Take your time. I just wouldn't want us to miss out on this golden opportunity. William nodded, his face giving nothing away, though his insides churned with anger. How could Daniel sit there, feigning concern while planning to rob him of everything they'd built? The rest of the dinner passed without incident, but William's resolve solidified. He wouldn't confront Daniel just yet, not until Liam had more concrete evidence. But he knew in his heart that the friendship he had cherished was over. There was no coming back from this. That night, as William lay in bed, unable to sleep, he thought of Isabella. Her warning had saved him from the greatest mistake of his life. But now he had to find a way to protect everything he held dear without giving away his suspicions too soon. Daniel was playing a dangerous game, and William needed to be ready for whatever lay ahead. The following morning, William awoke with a weight in his chest, heavier than it had been the night before. He replayed every moment of his recent dinner with Daniel, examining every smile, every reassurance, every hint of impatience. How long had Daniel been planning this? William's thoughts were consumed by the man who had once been his greatest ally, but was now his greatest adversary. By midday, Liam called, and William's pulse quickened as he answered. Liam's tone was calm yet urgent. I've uncovered more. I think we're looking at the whole picture now. William leaned forward in his chair, heart pounding. What did you find? There's been a pattern of small, carefully orchestrated transactions over the past year, money siphoned from the company in just the right amounts to avoid raising flags internally. He's been funneling these funds into a personal offshore account. By now he's already taken more than you'd think. How much? William's voice was tight with tension. Millions, William, Liam replied bluntly. Nearly 5 million, all hidden in accounts that would have been hard to track if we hadn't caught this early. He's been planning this meticulously for a long time. The floor seemed to drop out from beneath William. $5 million, a staggering betrayal, not just in monetary terms but in the calculated nature of it. Daniel had been planning his move incrementally for over a year. William Parker sat rigidly at his desk, listening intently as Liam, his investigator, laid out the damning evidence. It was not just a moment of seizing an opportunity. Daniel had been meticulously orchestrating William's downfall from the shadows all along. Liam continued, his tone serious and firm. William, there's more. I've uncovered conversations that suggest Daniel has been liaising with some of your biggest competitors. He's positioning himself for a significant move, possibly to seize control of the company once this deal goes through. If you had signed those papers, you'd be handing him everything. A chill ran down William's spine. The signs had been there, subtle and woven into the background of their partnership, but he had ignored them, choosing instead to rely on years of friendship and trust. Daniel had been scheming for months, building his network, quietly redirecting funds and setting up the perfect conditions for a hostile takeover. William, you need to move swiftly, Liam urged, his voice firm. This isn't just some reckless gamble, this is a calculated and premeditated act of fraud. If you don't act now, he's going to strike. William's knuckles turned white as he gripped the edge of his desk. What's our next move? He asked, though his mind was already racing ahead, formulating a plan. Liam maintained a calm professionalism. First, you need to freeze his accounts. The evidence we have more than justifies it. Then, confront him, but do so strategically. Don't let him know everything you're aware of until you're ready to force his hand. William nodded, his mind already processing the logistics of this next phase. I'll reach out to my legal team immediately. The company's security comes first. Good, Liam affirmed. I'll send over all the documentation we've gathered. You'll have everything you need for legal action. When the call ended, William leaned back, staring blankly at the ceiling. The weight of the situation pressed down on him like an anchor. Daniel, the man he had once trusted implicitly, had been meticulously plotting his betrayal. He could feel the rage simmering just beneath the surface, but he knew he had to stay level-headed. Daniel wasn't just a friend turned adversary, he was a worthy opponent who had been carefully planning each move. But now, for the first time, William had the advantage. He swiftly called his legal team, sharing the details of what Liam had uncovered. His attorneys promptly began drafting the paperwork to freeze Daniel's accounts, ensuring he couldn't access any more funds. For a brief moment, William felt a glimmer of relief. He had acted quickly enough to halt Daniel's plans, at least for now. But the satisfaction was fleeting. He knew the hardest part was yet to come. Confronting Daniel would be the ultimate test, and William was acutely aware of his former friend's manipulative prowess. As the day progressed, William's resolve only solidified. He would confront Daniel, but he would do it on his terms. A year of hidden deceit and betrayal required careful handling. He had to be prepared for anything. That evening, William set up a meeting with Daniel at a private office space they frequently used for confidential conversations. The setting felt neutral, yet fitting for the confrontation ahead. Daniel arrived on time, his demeanor as friendly as ever, wearing that same easygoing charm that now felt like venom. "Hey, Will," Daniel greeted him with a broad smile as he walked in. "Been thinking about this deal, how close we are to making it official." William forced himself to remain calm, gesturing toward the chairs. "Take a seat. We need to have a serious talk." Daniel's smile wavered as he took his seat, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. "What's going on? Something wrong?" For a long, silent moment, William just looked at him. The weight of shared memories clashed with the cold reality that the man sitting across from him had been quietly plotting against him. It was surreal, almost unbelievable. "I know everything, Daniel," William finally said, his voice steady but carrying a razor's edge. "The offshore accounts. The stolen money. The plans you've been laying behind my back." Daniel's face went pale, but he quickly tried to cover it, leaning back in his chair with a forced smirk. "Will, you've been working too hard. Sounds like you're imagining things." William's gaze narrowed. "I hired an investigator, Daniel. We have every transfer, every communication. You've been planning this for over a year." The tension thickened. Daniel's confident facade cracked just slightly, exposing the truth behind his mask. William could see him calculating his next move, searching for a way out. "I trusted you, Daniel," William said, his voice laced with both anger and disbelief. "We built this company side by side, and here you are, siphoning funds, positioning yourself to take it all. How long have you been scheming?" Daniel crossed his arms, attempting a facade of calm indifference. "You're blowing things out of proportion, Will. Whatever you think you've uncovered, it's not what it looks like." William let out a bitter laugh, stunned that Daniel would still try to manipulate him. "Not what it looks like. I've seen the transfers, millions moved into offshore accounts. You've been making deals with our competitors right under my nose. This isn't a misunderstanding. You were planning to take over the company and leave me with nothing." Daniel's expression turned icy, his usual charm falling away. "Fine, you want the truth?" he sneered. "Yeah, I've been planning this. What choice did I have? I've spent years in your shadow, doing the grunt work while you get all the glory. You're the one everyone praises, and I'm the one they ignore. I deserve more." William stared at him, a wave of disgust and disbelief rising within him. "This is about your ego. You think you're entitled to more, so you decide to steal from me. From everything we've built." Daniel's frustration erupted, his voice a bitter hiss. "It's not about stealing, it's about fairness. I've given just as much to this company as you have, but you're the one everyone respects. I'm just the invisible partner, standing in your shadow. I'm done with that." William's anger flared. "You think that justifies stealing millions, destroying everything we've accomplished together? I would have been willing to talk, to work something out if you felt overlooked. But you chose betrayal instead." Daniel's eyes flashed with resentment. "Talk? You wouldn't have changed anything. You've always kept me at arm's length, and I wasn't going to wait any longer. I deserve more, and I was going to take it." William shook his head in disbelief. "Unbelievable. All this because of envy. I never once thought of you as less than a partner. But you," he trailed off, the depth of betrayal cutting through him like a blade. "You've destroyed everything." Daniel's face darkened, his voice dropping to a venomous tone. "You don't understand. I had no choice. I've waited too long. This deal was my chance to finally get what I deserve." William stood, his fists clenched. "No, Daniel. You were going to get nothing. You thought you could take over, but I've frozen the accounts. I have the evidence, and I won't let you dismantle what we've built." Daniel's eyes widened in shock. "You what?" "I've already notified the legal team," William replied coldly. "Your accounts are frozen. You won't access another cent." For the first time, William saw true fear in Daniel's eyes. He stood up abruptly, his voice rising. "You can't do this. This was my only chance. I've put too much into this plan." William remained unmoved, his voice calm but resolute. It's over, Daniel. You've betrayed me, this company, and yourself. And there's no coming back from that. Daniel's expression twisted with rage. You think you've won? Freezing my accounts isn't enough. I have connections, Will. You don't know who you're dealing with. William met his gaze unshaken. I know exactly who I'm dealing with. And I'm not afraid of you or your so-called connections. You're finished. Daniel took a step back, his bravado crumbling as the reality set in. His years of planning, his intricate scheme, it was all collapsing. He was trapped, and he knew it. You'll regret this, he muttered, his voice dripping with hatred. You'll regret ever coming after me. William didn't flinch. The only regret I have is trusting you, thinking you were ever a friend. With one last venomous look, Daniel stormed out, leaving William alone in the silent office. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on him, yet there was also an undeniable sense of relief. He had taken the first steps to secure his company, to protect his legacy, but the cost had been greater than he'd ever anticipated. He sank into his chair, his head in his hands. The betrayal cut deep, but he couldn't afford to dwell on it. He had to keep moving forward, to rebuild what Daniel had tried to tear apart. As William Parker sat quietly in the room, he sensed the shift in the air as the door opened, revealing Isabella Hayes. She had been waiting outside, intuitively aware that something significant was taking place. With an expression full of concern, she moved cautiously towards him. William? She asked softly, her voice carrying both warmth and unease. Looking up, William's face showed the weariness of recent events but also a new resolve. It's done. Daniel is gone, he replied, the weight of those words sinking in. Isabella hesitated, then settled into a chair across from him. I'm so sorry, she said, her voice laced with empathy. William nodded slowly, allowing himself a moment of vulnerability. I should have seen it coming. I trusted him, and he turned on me. Gently, Isabella placed her hand on his arm. You did what you had to do, William. You stopped him before it was too late. Taking a deep breath, William tried to release some of the tension he'd been carrying. Because of you, he replied, gratitude softening his tone. She offered a small smile. I'm just glad I could help. They sat in silence, letting the gravity of the situation settle around them. William knew the path forward wouldn't be easy. He would face legal battles, manage the fallout from Daniel's actions, and work to rebuild the company's reputation. Yet, for the first time in days, William felt a flicker of hope. With Isabella by his side, he wasn't facing this fight alone. The following morning, William sat at his desk, reflecting on the events of the day before. Daniel's betrayal was exposed, and his plan to seize control of the company had been dismantled. Though a great burden had been lifted, the sting of betrayal lingered like a shadow over him. Staring out at the city North Star, he couldn't shake one thought from his mind, Isabella. The young woman who had risked everything to warn him. Without her intervention, he might have signed the deal, unknowingly handing his legacy to Daniel. She had saved him from losing everything. Realizing he couldn't move forward without properly acknowledging Isabella's bravery, William knew he had to express his gratitude in more than words. Her courage had changed the course of his life, and he wanted to repay her in a meaningful way. William picked up his phone and called the cafe where she worked. When the manager answered, William inquired about Isabella's schedule. Upon learning she wasn't working that day, he decided he would thank her in person. That afternoon, William drove to the modest neighborhood where Isabella lived. The area was a far cry from the opulence he was used to. Small, tidy homes lined narrow streets, and aging cars were parked along the curb. The scene reminded him that not everyone inhabited a world of power and luxury. Stepping out of his car, William approached the modest, weather-worn house Isabella shared with her mother. Feeling an unexpected wave of nervousness, he knocked on the door, hoping she would understand the reason behind his visit. After a few moments, the door opened and Isabella stood there, clearly surprised to see him. Mr. Parker? She asked, a mix of curiosity and confusion in her expression. What brings you here? Offering a gentle smile, William replied, I came to thank you properly. Isabella moved aside, inviting him in. You didn't have to go to all this trouble. As he stepped inside, William took in the cozy, well-maintained space. The furniture showed signs of wear, and a faint aroma of herbal tea lingered in the air. Her home was worlds away from his own, but it only deepened his respect for the obstacles she had likely overcome. She led him into a small living room where they settled on an old, comfortable couch. Isabella's expression was guarded, unsure of what to expect. I've had a lot on my mind lately, William began, his tone genuine. And I realized that without your warning, I would have lost everything. You didn't have to get involved, but you did. That means more to me than I can put into words. Shifting uncomfortably, Isabella responded, I only did what anyone else would have done. I couldn't stand by and let him deceive you. Shaking his head, William replied, No, Isabella. Not everyone would have spoken up. Many people would have kept quiet, thinking it wasn't their place. But you took a risk, and because of that, you saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. Isabella's cheeks flushed slightly, but her humility remained evident. I just did what felt right. William smiled, feeling an immense sense of gratitude. I want to repay you for that courage. I remember you telling me that you had to give up school to care for your mother. I'd like to help you finish your education, if that's still something you want. Her eyes widened in astonishment. You mean, you'd help me go back to school? Nodding, William continued. I know you're passionate about economics, and I believe you have remarkable potential. I want you to have the chance to complete what you started. And, if you're interested, I'd also like to offer you a position at my company. You've already shown good instincts, and I could use someone like you on my team. Overwhelmed, Isabella looked at him, her gratitude shining through her disbelief. I don't know what to say. This is more than I ever dreamed of. You've earned it, William replied warmly. You helped me when you didn't have to. This is my way of saying thank you. Tears welled up in Isabella's eyes, and she quickly blinked them away, trying to maintain her composure. I can't thank you enough, Mr. Parker. This means everything to me. William reached out, gently placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You don't need to thank me, Isabella. Just embrace this opportunity and make the most of it. I believe in you. Still moved by the unexpected generosity, Isabella nodded. I will, I promise. As he rose to leave, William felt a profound sense of lightness. He had fulfilled a personal debt, not just with an offer, but by giving back to someone who had selflessly helped him. Pausing at the door, he looked back at her. I'll have my team get in touch with you about the details, he said, but for now, focus on your family and consider what you'd like to do next. Isabella smiled, her eyes still glistening. Thank you, Mr. Parker. I'll never forget this. With a final nod, William stepped outside into the cool evening air. As he walked back to his car, a newfound peace settled over him. For the first time since Daniel's betrayal, he felt as though he was truly moving forward. Isabella's courage had transformed his world, and now he had given her the chance to shape hers. It wasn't just about repaying a debt. It was about extending gratitude to someone who had lifted him when he needed it most. That, above all else, brought him a lasting sense of fulfillment. In the days following William Parker's visit to Isabella Hayes's home, both their lives began to shift in unexpected ways. Isabella found herself reflecting on the remarkable opportunity William had offered her. Returning to school had always been a distant dream ever since she'd put her education on hold to care for her mother. Now that dream was within reach, and the idea of working at William's company felt like a chance she never thought possible. Yet, as excited as she was, Isabella couldn't help but feel hesitant. She had grown used to staying in the background, helping others without drawing attention to herself. Stepping into this new world thrilled her and terrified her. Meanwhile, William had already spoken to his team, making sure everything was in place for Isabella to start whenever she was ready. He understood it was a big decision and he wanted her to feel no rush. But deep down, he was certain she would accept. He'd seen the ambition in her eyes and knew she had the potential to excel. A week later, Isabella made her decision. William was in his office, buried in paperwork, when his assistant buzzed him. Mr. Parker, Isabella Hayes is here to see you. A sense of anticipation stirred in William. Send her in. When the door opened, Isabella stepped inside, her expression a blend of nerves and resolve. William rose, greeting her with a warm smile. Isabella, it's good to see you, he said, gesturing for her to sit. How have you been feeling? Isabella took a seat, clasping her hands together. I've thought a lot about your offer, she began, her voice steady but laced with excitement. And I've decided to accept it, the chance to go back to school and the position at your company. William's smile widened. I'm glad you've decided to join us. I had a feeling you'd make this choice. Letting out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, Isabella nodded. It's a bit overwhelming, honestly. I never imagined myself in a position like this. He nodded, understanding. It's a big change, but you've already shown you have the skills. Your instincts are sharp, and your background in economics will be an asset to the team. And for school, we'll ensure you have the flexibility to manage both commitments. A grateful smile crossed Isabella's face. Thank you, Mr. Parker. This means more to me than you know. William leaned in slightly, his expression both serious and encouraging. I want you to know, Isabella, this isn't just about returning a favor. I see real potential in you. You've shown poise and intelligence when it mattered most. I'm confident that with the right support, you'll thrive here. Hearing this stirred something in Isabella. No one had ever placed such faith in her abilities. It was daunting but deeply inspiring, and William's belief in her gave her the strength to rise above her doubts. I won't let you down, she said, her voice filled with determination. William smiled, clearly satisfied. I have no doubt you'll succeed. We'll get the paperwork started for your school enrollment, and in the meantime, we'll begin integrating you into the company. You'll have a mentor assigned to help you get settled, and I'll be here to support you whenever you need it. Isabella nodded, feeling the significance of the moment. She was about to embark on a new chapter, one brimming with possibility. There was still a bit of fear, but it was overshadowed by a sense of purpose and excitement. After discussing the details of her new role and her school plans, Isabella stood to leave. She felt lighter, as if a tremendous weight had been lifted. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to dream. Turning back at the door, she said softly, "Thank you, Mr. Parker, for everything." William gave her a kind smile. You've earned this, Isabella. Welcome to the team.